Welcome to Shinn Teachings. Nothing is withheld from the one who aligns with divine law. I became the first millionaire in my family by walking in faith, speaking the word and living by 5 unshakable laws. Today, I share them with you.
I did not come from money. I did not come from silver spoons or trust funds or neatly stacked inheritance papers signed by the hands of earthly patriarchs. But I did come from law. I came from rhythm. I came from the spoken word that never returns void. And that, my dear listener, is a far greater inheritance than any vault of gold locked behind the gates of men. For the vault I opened was spiritual, and the key I turned was invisible. I broke the back of generational lack not with hustle. Not with hustle's frantic sweat, not with the panic of performance or the pressure of proving I belonged. I broke it with declaration, with rhythm, with the sacred, repeated, divine speech that says, "What is?" until the world agrees. I spoke my wealth before I touched it. I praised my millions while the bank balance mocked me. I laid claim to the unseen treasury while those around me wrung their hands over cents. And I did not flinch because I knew. I was not repeating wishful thinking. I was enforcing spiritual law. Let them say what they will about luck and lineage and labor. I came from none of those. I came from truth. I was born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of man, but of God. And being born of God, I knew that my supply came not from what I saw, but from what I said. Not from toil, but from tongue. Not from budget, but from belief. I did not wait to inherit. I declared my inheritance. I did not knock on doors. I spoke them into opening. And while others feared the economy, I feasted on the word. For the word was made flesh, and wealth is simply divine word clothed in matter. Do you hear me? Your next fortune is not out there. It is in here, already encoded in your voice. Already hovering in the unseen, waiting for the sound of law to call it into the scene. You do not need more money. You need more rhythm, more authority, more unshakable, unapologetic speech that speaks as if you already received, because in divine mind you already have. You don't inherit gold. You inherit the word. And if you speak that word in season, if you decree that law when everything around you shouts limitation, if you anchor yourself not to your history but to divine order, then all that is yours must appear. It cannot help itself, for spiritual law obeys voice. It does not obey silence. It does not obey worry. It does not obey mere desire. It obeys speech. So I ask you, whose voice is shaping your fortune today? Your ancestors? Your fears? The voice of the news? Or the voice of the I am? You may not come from money, but if you come from law, then you come from the true vault, and that vault will never run dry. That vault cannot be stolen. That vault is built on the rhythm of let there be. That vault responds not to striving, but to speech. Let the world keep its trust funds and inherited land. I have a higher trust, a divine trust, a spiritual estate, and every time I speak the word, I cash the inheritance my soul has carried for lifetimes. And now I speak to you. Rise, speak. Step forward as the first in your family not to earn wealth, but to remember it, to speak it, to declare it. Because if you came from law, then you came from the highest bloodline in existence. And no curse, no past, no pattern can outrun a spoken word backed by divine knowing. There is a curse that no one names aloud, but almost every soul carries in silence. A generational vibration of lack, a whispered agreement passed down through worn-out phrases, hollow prayers, and unchallenged fear. It is not written in wills or signed in ink, but etched deep into the language of families, encoded in the sighs of mothers who said, "We'll get by," and the hunched shoulders of fathers who muttered, "It's never enough." It's in the trembling hesitation of children who learned not to ask, not to dream too big, not to expect the windows of heaven to open for them. And though no one says it outright, the unspoken doctrine rings louder than scripture in most households. Money is hard, wealth is for others, we are not the chosen. That is the inheritance most people unknowingly accept, the belief that they must tiptoe through life, never upsetting the invisible rules of struggle, never questioning the weight of ancestral patterns that have calcified into identity. But I am here to tell you the truth. You are not your family's struggle. You are not their scarcity. You are not the echo of their fears or the extension of their lack. You are not their caution made flesh. You are the interruption. You are the reversal. You are the holy contradiction to every story they survived but never questioned. You are the spoken law that breaks the pattern, and to become that, you must renounce not their love, but their limitations. You must stop protecting the voice of lack just because it sounds familiar. You must stop romanticizing the struggle just because it was honorable. And you must stop confusing inheritance with imitation. Because what you carry is not just their blood, it is their unspoken beliefs. And unless you bring those into the light of spiritual law, you will find yourself repeating what you swore to transcend. Not because you want to, but because agreement is magnetic. The tongue is the pen of the heart, and the tongue of your house wrote lack into the walls. But now the pen is in your hand, and you must write something new. You must write wealth into your walls. You must speak abundance into your lineage. You must change the rhythm of your bloodline by changing the rhythm of your voice. I know what it is to love people who feared money. I know what it is to honor the hands that raised you while refusing the fear that shaped them. But I also know this: agreement with their fear is not love. Agreement with their limitation is not loyalty. And when I finally said, no more, I choose law over legacy, something broke in the unseen. I felt it. A spiritual cord snapped, a generational spell dissolved. A new rhythm began to pulse through me, one that did not apologize for wanting more, one that did not flinch at wealth, one that did not wear smallness like a badge of honor. It was then that I remembered the truth of Galatians 3:29. And if ye be Christ's, then are ye Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promise. I was not merely the daughter of my earthly lineage. I was an heir, not of struggle, but of promise, not of delay, but of divine order, not of lack, but of law. And I spoke that inheritance into form. I said, I am the heir of wealth, the child of divine supply, the vessel through which my entire family line shall rise. And when I said it, I meant it, and when I meant it, heaven moved, because heaven listens not to desperation, but to dominion. It listens to heirs, it listens to boldness, it listens to those who no longer ask, am I worthy? And instead declare, it is mine. You, beloved, are not here to carry their weight. You are here to close their cycle. You are here to speak a better word, and you must begin now. For every time you say, I receive, you speak for those who never could. And every time you declare, I am the first but not the last, you become the generational gatekeeper of divine reversal. You become the vault opener, the curse breaker, the new law in motion. There comes a moment, rare, holy, irreversible, when the soul stops rehearsing the story of its past and begins declaring the law of its future. A moment when you no longer argue with your reflection, no longer plead for permission from ghosts, no longer ask struggle to step aside, but instead rise in the name of divine law and say, I choose a different inheritance. That moment, for me, was not filled with lightning or applause. It was quiet, sacred, a spiritual stillness that rose up in my being like a wave of fire that refused to recede. I remember standing in front of the same mirror where generations of women before me had adjusted their expectations downward. And I heard the sentence, not with ears, but with spirit. You do not have to carry their fear. You came to reverse it. That was the day I changed my name in the spirit, not from Scovel to Shinn, but from legacy to law, not from survival to supply, not from borrowed beliefs to bold dominion. That was the day I looked my inherited identity in the eye and said, I see you, I honor you, but I do not serve you anymore. You see, the law does not need your family's permission. The law does not wait until everyone claps. The law moves when you speak. And I spoke. I said, I am the first to receive what was always mine in spirit. Not what I earned, not what I achieved, but what had already been prepared, already waiting, already pulsing in the atmosphere of divine substance, looking for a voice that would call it forth. And when I spoke, heaven did not blink. It responded. It rearranged itself to agree with my agreement. For the law is always listening, not to your feelings, but to your declarations. And on that day, I made the most dangerous, most liberating, most loving declaration I had ever dared to utter. I choose divine law over family legacy. I choose inheritance by speech, not by sympathy. I choose to be the first, not because I'm better, but because I remembered first. It was not rebellion. It was remembrance. It was not betrayal. It was obedience to spirit. It was not arrogance. It was alignment. And as I walked forward with my new spiritual name, I felt the past try to call me back. I heard the voices say, "That's not how we were raised. Be realistic. Don't speak too boldly." But I had changed frequency. I had tuned into a station they had never dared to find. And from that moment forward, I vowed never to let the volume of ancestral limitation drown out the melody of spiritual law. I vowed never again to choose belonging over breakthrough. I vowed to speak, walk, spend, and expect as one who knows the truth, that no one can pass on what they never possessed, but the law of God was mine from the beginning. And so I invite you now to your turning point, you who feel torn between honoring where you came from and becoming who you're called to be, you who fear leaving the tribe of smallness, you who whisper declarations in secret but haven't yet claimed them aloud. Let today be the day. Let now be the moment you say, I am the first in my line to remember the law. Say it trembling. Say it shaking. But say it. Because heaven doesn't need your perfection. It needs your permission. And when you speak with holy remembrance, with sacred defiance, with unwavering agreement, your entire bloodline begins to shift. Not because they followed you, but because you finally followed truth. The first law that shattered the spell of poverty over my life was the law of substitution. It is simple in theory, but radical in practice. It states that whatever you do not want, you must not rehearse, and whatever you do want, you must install into consciousness through deliberate, rhythmic, law-rooted speech. It is the law that commands, replace the lie with truth, the fear with faith, the lack with law. For consciousness is never neutral. It is either echoing the world or announcing heaven, and the soul who would rise must learn to interrupt its own inner dialogue with spiritual authority. I saw this firsthand when I realized just how often my thoughts were borrowed, how frequently I repeated the fearful phrases of my upbringing without question. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't get your hopes up. We can't afford that. These were not simply words, they were spells, spoken agreements with a lower realm, magnetic frequencies that pulled my life downward every time I let them pass my lips. And I knew, if I didn't change my words, I would never change my world. So I began to practice substitution, not as a spiritual game, but as sacred discipline. Whenever I heard the voice of fear whisper, "You're behind," I spoke. I walk in perfect timing with divine supply. When my bank account threatened to preach to me, I interrupted it with, "Money comes to me now, rich and unceasing, under grace." And when worry tried to narrate my future, I cut it off mid-sentence and declared, "My future is already funded." The world called it denial. But I knew better. I was not denying reality. I was replacing illusion. I was not ignoring facts. I was installing truth. For truth is not passive. Truth is a sword. Truth is a law. Truth is the only voice the universe must obey. And every time I substituted fear with the spoken word of God, I was enforcing that truth, not only in the heavens, but in the rhythm of my own being. It was not easy at first. The old phrases were stubborn. They had been spoken by generations. They carried the weight of memories, the sound of familiar sorrow, the logic of survival. But the law does not bow to memory, it bows to voice. And so I persisted. I traded every sentence of worry for a declaration of wealth. I swapped every sigh of lack for a shout of divine sufficiency. I went to war with my inner language, not with anger, but with authority. And slowly, my inner atmosphere began to change. I felt it in my bones before I saw it in my life. The fear began to thin. The doubt began to unravel. The shame began to lift. And in its place came the golden silence of peace, the knowing that what I had declared was already in motion, already forming, already flowing into visibility. The law of substitution is the sword you must draw if you are to cut off the inherited language of limitation. It is not enough to love your family. You must speak a higher rhythm than they had access to. It is not enough to wish for wealth. You must replace every internal voice that says, "It's too late, too far, too much," with the voice of law that says, "It is done, it is mine, it is arriving now." Say it again. It is done. It is mine. It is arriving now. This is the way of the law. It does not argue, it replaces. It does not negotiate, it declares. And you, beloved, are not here to maintain the spell. You are here to reverse it. You are here to speak what should have been spoken generations ago. You are here to install a vocabulary of victory where there has only been the muttering of survival. You are here to wear the crown of clarity in a house that echoed confusion, and you will do it, not by force, not by chance, but by substitution, by replacing fear with faith, delay with decree, echo with law. So begin now, today. When fear speaks, override it. When doubt whispers, interrupt it. When old patterns rise, cast them out with the word. For your future does not belong to what you feel, it belongs to what you declare. And the law of substitution will never fail a voice that refuses to echo fear. The second law that turned my life from financial drought into divine downpour was the law of prosperity. And let me be clear from the beginning. Prosperity is not a reward. It is not the prize of perfect behavior, the wage of spiritual performance, or the fluke of generational favor. Prosperity is a law, a current, a spiritual substance waiting for voice, rhythm, and alignment. And until you see it as law, you will beg where you should be declaring, you will delay where you should be receiving, and you will continue to place effort where only alignment was ever needed. I learned this not by theory, but by necessity. I learned this law when everything I touched in the material seemed to dry up. I gave, I prayed, I planned, but nothing flowed, because I still believed, deep down, that wealth came from work alone. I had not yet made the substitution from man's economy to God's. I still feared that my good was earned, not given, that it was limited, not infinite, that I had to chase it rather than allow it. But the law of prosperity does not respond to toil. It responds to truth. It does not need your exhaustion. It needs your agreement, and agreement is established through speech. So I began to say it daily, hourly, like breath. Money comes to me now, under grace, in perfect ways. I said it when I was owed and not paid. I said it when bills lined the table like soldiers. I said it when my feelings fought back with sarcasm and fear. I said it not because I felt prosperous, but because I knew that law does not follow emotion. It follows word. And every time I said it, I was shifting bank accounts in the invisible. I was drawing substance from the unseen into alignment with the seen. I was cashing spiritual checks long before the envelope arrived. Because in divine law, money does not appear by effort, it appears by order. And order is spoken, not strained. It was then I understood the hidden arrogance of financial anxiety. To worry about money is to assume that your effort is the only source. To panic over bills is to forget that your source is infinite. To bow to appearance is to insult supply. And so I repented, not in shame, but in clarity. I laid down the belief that I was my own provider. I canceled the subconscious religion of hustle. I stepped out of the cult of overwork and into the sanctuary of spoken wealth. And the results did not trickle, they rushed. Ideas came, gifts flowed, delayed payments released, unexpected channels opened. Not because I earned it, but because I aligned, because I allowed, because I finally believed that what God has for me cannot be blocked by man, delayed by numbers, or denied by time. If you are to rise, you must install this law deep into your vocabulary. Wealth is not earned. It is claimed. Speak it when you feel unworthy. Speak it when they question you. Speak it when the digits say otherwise, for the digits are not your source. God is. Divine substance is. And it does not run dry. It does not flinch. It does not ask for resumes. It listens for rhythm. It listens for covenant speech. It listens for the voice that says, I am ready now, not because I've done enough, but because I finally remember the truth. I was never supposed to toil for my treasure. I was only supposed to speak it into motion. This is the law of prosperity. To see money not as master but as messenger. To see increase not as a test, but as a default. To live as one who knows, with every cell, that the vaults of heaven are voice-activated, and that every declaration you make in truth is a withdrawal slip signed by the authority of spirit. Of all the laws I ever came to know, the law of command was the one that most swiftly turned the tide, not because it was louder, but because it was final. It is the law that does not ask, does not beg, does not wait, and does not negotiate. It decrees, it declares, it speaks, and so it is. This is the law that separates the spiritual child from the spiritual heir. It separates the one who hopes from the one who knows. And until you learn to speak, not wish, not affirm, but command, you will remain at the mercy of appearance, the slave of circumstance, the beggar in a kingdom you were born to govern. You must remember what I came to remember. Heaven does not respond to emotion. It responds to dominion. And dominion is always vocal. Dominion has a voice. Dominion walks into a room and says, "Let there be," even when there is nothing but void and chaos. Dominion stands in the middle of lack and says, "Supply, come forth." Dominion knows that silence is agreement with appearances, but speech is alignment with law. The law of command changed everything for me the moment I stopped narrating my fears and started legislating my faith. There is a difference. Most people think they're praying when they're only panicking. They think they're declaring when they're only describing. But the law is not moved by description. It is moved by decree. And so I began to speak to everything as if it could hear me, because in the spiritual realm it can. I spoke to money. I spoke to clients. I spoke to checks. I spoke to invisible streams of income as if they were standing before me, waiting for instruction. And I did not ask them to come. I commanded them. I said, I now command all riches ordained for me to appear swiftly by divine law and without delay. I said it with my back straight, my heart lifted, my eyes focused, not on what I had, but on what I had already claimed in the Spirit. It was then that I realized I was not waiting for money. Money was waiting for me to speak, waiting for me to give it a job, a direction, a command. You see, money is not your master. It is your servant. And like any servant, it responds only to clear, bold, unapologetic instruction. If you speak with doubt, it hesitates. If you speak with confusion, it scatters. If you speak with guilt, it avoids you. But if you speak with clarity, if you speak with conviction, if you speak as one who knows that divine supply is not a reward but a right, then it comes, and it comes quickly, for you have activated the law. So I ask you now, when was the last time you commanded? When was the last time you stopped asking for what you already have, and instead announced it with divine confidence? When was the last time you looked your bills in the face and said, I do not answer to numbers, numbers answer to me? That is not arrogance. That is alignment. That is spiritual law in motion. That is faith speaking its native tongue. And the universe listens closely when a child of God remembers how to speak. The law of command is not something you use once. It is something you become. You become the decree. You become the instruction. You become the authority. And when you walk in that voice, when you stop softening your words to make others comfortable, when you stop apologizing for what you're calling in, when you speak like one who cannot be denied, your world begins to obey. Because the world was made by word, and it still responds to it. So today, speak as one who commands. Speak not with noise, but with knowing. Speak not from fear, but from fullness. Speak not to convince the world, but to announce to it what has already been declared in heaven. For when you speak with spiritual command, you are no longer a victim of delay. You are the voice that opens vaults. There is a cruel illusion that haunts those who walk the spiritual path but do not yet trust the rhythm of heaven. It is the illusion of delay. It whispers, "You're late." It taunts, "You missed it." It chants, "Everyone else got there before you." And if you do not know the law of divine right timing, that illusion will sabotage your spirit, strangle your faith, and make you doubt what is already en route. But let me speak plainly. Delay is not divine. Delay is disobedience to spiritual truth. Delay is not the nature of spirit. Divine order is. Divine rhythm is. Divine timing is not sluggish, it is precise. And once I understood this law, I stopped treating time like a tyrant and started treating it like a servant. I stopped waiting and I started walking. I stopped begging the clock and started declaring the moment. Because the law of divine right timing does not mean waiting for the world to align. It means aligning your voice so that the world must follow. You see, the minute you speak your word, the machinery of heaven moves. The invisible gears turn. The delivery system of spirit is activated. But if you begin to speak fear before your manifestation arrives, you cancel the order. You interrupt the process. You declare to the heavens that you do not believe the law is working. And so I had to learn to hold my peace in the hallway. I had to learn to say, "What is mine cannot be late," even when everything around me suggested otherwise. I had to stop measuring truth by time and start measuring time by truth, because time is not your ruler. It is your canvas. And what you paint on it with your words becomes your experience of it. I remember seasons where nothing seemed to move, where the check didn't arrive, where the opportunity didn't open, where the evidence said no. But I refused to change my confession. I kept saying, "My harvest is on schedule." I said it when people asked, "Are you sure this is working?" I said it when others passed me by. I said it when my emotions threatened to drag me into impatience. Because I knew, deep in my bones, that divine timing is never early, never late, and never wrong. It is always exact. It is always efficient. It is always calibrated to the highest good. And most importantly, it responds to the spoken word, not the anxious heart. The law of divine right timing taught me to speak as if what I had asked for was already walking toward me, to prepare the table, to open the envelope, to celebrate before the door opened. Because faith does not wait for signs, it gives them. Faith does not require evidence, it creates it. And when you walk by this law, you begin to move through the world with a different rhythm. You are no longer frantic. You are no longer comparing. You are no longer postponing your peace. Instead, you live in the knowing that your life is unfolding on schedule, not by fate, but by decree, not by circumstance, but by covenant. Say this now. What is mine is on time. What is mine is arriving now. What is mine cannot be delayed, because divine law has already released it. Let that be the rhythm of your days. Let that be the drumbeat beneath your breath. And when doubt tries to whisper its deadlines, you look it in the face and say, "You are not my clock. Spirit is, and spirit is never late." The law of divine right timing is not a passive waiting room. It is an active agreement with the eternal now. It is a declaration that says, "Because I have spoken it, the time is now holy, and the hour is already delivering." So never again will you speak delay. Never again will you say, maybe next year. Never again will you defer your dominion to a future moment. Because the moment you speak in alignment with divine law, time bows, doors open, angels move, supply obeys, and you no longer wait in fear, you walk in faith. This law, this final and foundational law, is the secret many skip, yet it is the soil in which every other law takes root. It is the law of identity, and it asks you not what you want, but who you are. For every spoken word, every financial declaration, every divine command, if not rooted in the soil of your self-concept, will struggle to bloom. This is the law that does not wait for outward proof, because it knows the outer is only ever an echo of the inner. Until you become wealth in your consciousness, the world will not mirror it in your accounts. Until you see yourself as chosen, equipped, crowned by divine law to circulate abundance, you will continue to speak prosperity while identifying with poverty. And law cannot override identity. It must emerge from it. And so I say to you, with the full authority of spiritual law, you do not get wealth. You become it. You do not attract money from the outside in. You express wealth from the inside out. You do not climb into prosperity. You remember that it was always yours, and the moment you stop identifying with the struggler, the hustler, the underdog, the one who barely makes it, the moment you renounce that false lineage and step into the truth of who you are, the world changes its response, because the world can only ever respond to your self-concept. It cannot outdeliver your image. It cannot manifest beyond your definition. The law of identity is precise. It does not ask, what do you hope for? It demands, who do you think you are? And I began to rise the day I stopped asking for more money and started saying, I am the wealth of God made visible. It was a shocking confession at first. My circumstances laughed, my bank account protested, my family recoiled, but I kept saying it. I am the wealth of God made visible. And slowly, the shadows began to flee. Not because I argued with them, but because I refused to identify with them. I stopped dressing like lack. I stopped walking like scarcity. I stopped agreeing with the version of myself who had been handed down through fear, through trauma, through ancestral apology, and I stepped into a new vibration, not just in word, but in walk, in breath, in posture, in pace. I declared not only prosperity, but identity. I became the new lineage, and once you become the new lineage in spirit, the world must yield. It must rearrange. It must make room. You cannot be both the victim and the vessel. You cannot speak abundance while seeing yourself as one who is still trying to earn a seat at the table. You are the table. You are the vault. You are the law made flesh when you remember your name. And your name is not barely getting by. Your name is not the one who tries hard. Your name is divinely funded, permanently prosperous, heir of spiritual dominion. That is who you are. And until your identity matches your declaration, your world will hesitate. But once they align, wealth has no choice. It appears, not as a gift, but as a mirror. So say it now, with no apology and no delay. I am the wealth of God made visible, not because you have it yet, but because you are it now. Because identity precedes evidence. Because the law does not wait for you to earn it, it waits for you to own it. And once you own it, once you wear the garment that always fit, once you stop renting the image of success and start inhabiting the truth of abundance, then money becomes a servant, not a savior. Then riches become rhythm, not rescue. Then wealth becomes what it was always meant to be, your natural extension, not your desperate prayer. This is the law of identity, and it does not ask the world to change. It asks you to remember who you are and to speak from there, walk from there, command from there. For when you speak as wealth, the world becomes rich in your reflection. Before any external change can anchor itself in your life, the inner voice, the silent narrator of your every decision, must be rewritten, sanctified, and surrendered to truth. And let me tell you plainly, the reason most people never experience the laws they study is because the volume of their inner inheritance is louder than the rhythm of divine instruction. They speak affirmations with their mouth, but their inner voice whispers contradictions. They declare wealth in the morning, but rehearse fear by night. They say, "God is my supply." Yet beneath every purchase, every hesitation, every refusal to receive is a deeper script, one written long ago by family, by culture, by struggle, by lack. That script must now be burned. That voice must be retrained. Because the law of identity you just stepped into requires a new narrator. And that narrator must not echo what was. It must proclaim what is. You see, I had to confront every phrase I had inherited, every subtle, destructive echo that passed as common sense. We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't get your hopes up. Better safe than sorry. Rich people are greedy. These were not just sentences. They were spells, and I was under them, until I saw them for what they were: agreements with poverty, contracts with struggle, disguises worn by fear. And I began to cancel them out loud. I didn't just speak new affirmations, I revoked the old ones. I declared, I no longer consent to this language. I said, I break this verbal lineage now, because you cannot plant new declarations in soil poisoned by old speech. The ground must be cleared. The frequency must be reset. The voice inside you must match the voice you speak. And so I gave myself a holy task. Every time I heard the old voice say, "You can't," I responded instantly with, "I already have." When it whispered, "Be careful," I shouted, "I am divinely guided." When it cried, "That's too much," I laughed, "My supply is unlimited." I treated every thought like a trespasser, every phrase like a test, and the more I answered, the more the inner voice shifted. It stopped sounding like my mother, my uncle, my past. It began sounding like my spirit, like my divine inheritance, like heaven. And that voice, clear, bold, rhythmic, became my compass, my counselor, my internal confirmation that I had crossed over from fear to faith. If you are to rise into the laws I've spoken, this work cannot be skipped. You must become hyper-aware of what you say to yourself when no one is watching. You must catch the whispers before they write your next chapter. You must memorize new phrases as if your life depends on it, because it does. And so I offer you these replacements. Instead of, "I can't afford it," say, "My divine supply covers this with ease." Instead of, "Nothing ever works for me," say, "Everything I speak works in perfect order." Instead of, "I don't know how," say, "Divine intelligence shows me the way." Instead of, "It's too late," say, "I am right on time in divine rhythm." Make these not just sentences, but rituals. Let them play in your mind like a sacred melody. Let them interrupt every lesser voice until your inner world sings in unison with heaven. For the inner voice is not a reflection, it is the generator, and when it is rewired by truth, your entire life becomes a speaker blasting divine law into form. Speak this now. I no longer chase, I command. I no longer beg, I declare. I no longer echo fear, I speak from divine law. Let it echo within until no other voice remains. For once the voice inside aligns with law, there is no longer resistance, only rhythm. And wealth flows not because of what you say once, but because of what you now believe always. If the tongue is the pen of the Spirit, then every word you speak writes the conditions of your next chapter. You do not merely describe life, you design it. You do not simply respond to money, you author its movement with your language. Your mouth is not a commentary machine, it is a creation engine. And yet most people live unaware of the power sitting beneath their nose. They waste their words on worry. They fill their air with fear. They speak realism while wondering why miracles avoid them. But I tell you the truth. The words you allow to live on your tongue either license your wealth or sabotage it. Your tongue is your signature. It signs the checks that heaven is ready to issue. And unless it speaks law, it speaks loss. When I finally began to live in the law of identity and reprogram my inner voice, I knew I needed more than belief. I needed rhythm. Not occasional declarations, not emergency affirmations. Rhythm. Daily, sacred, repeated. Words that walked with me like armor, like compass, like decree. And so I crafted 3 spoken declarations that I would speak each morning before touching the world. These were not suggestions. They were non-negotiables. They were my tithe of the tongue, my spiritual ritual, my proof to spirit that I had decided to govern, not to grovel. And I give them to you now, not as poetry, but as protocol. Say them until your bones believe. Say them until your environment rearranges. Say them until they are no longer affirmations, they are facts. Declaration 1. All I need is already arriving. This first sentence is the antidote to panic, the cancellation of hustle, the holy balm for scarcity. It affirms the law of divine right timing and denies the illusion of delay. It puts your nervous system back into alignment with law. It reminds your body that it is not the source, it is the receiver. It tunes your awareness to see what is already flowing toward you and prevents you from contaminating your blessings with doubt. It is the sound of confidence in divine order. It is the rhythm of arrival. Declaration 2. My voice is the vault. This one changed everything. Because when you realize that your mouth is not a mirror but a master key, you stop talking like a prisoner. You stop repeating what you see and start instructing what must be. You stop looking for doors and start speaking them open. This sentence aligns you with the law of command. It places the authority back where it belongs, not in the economy, not in the job, not in the algorithm, but in you, in your voice. Because your voice is not just for expression, it is for extraction. Speak as the vault, speak as the lock and the key. Speak knowing that your sound is currency in the spiritual realm. Declaration 3. Large sums come to me now, under grace. Simple, director, final. I've said it in rooms where I had nothing. I've said it walking past store windows I couldn't enter. I've said it with tears in my eyes and power in my lungs. And every time I said it, the law answered. This declaration is not a wish. It is a withdrawal slip. It is not a mantra. It is a motion. And when spoken with authority, with rhythm, with repetition, it moves unseen hands. It draws money from divine channels. It calls forth clients, contracts, checks, inheritance, partnerships, all without strain, all without shame, all under grace. This is the language of the wealthy in spirit. This is the tongue of those who remember. Now hear me. These sentences are not magic if you say them once. They are not spells to be used in emergencies. They are training, reprogramming, identity reinforcement. They are spoken, evidence of your new self-concept. Speak them as you rise. Speak them before sleep. Speak them when the bill arrives, when the email delays, when the fear flares. Speak them not to calm your mind, but to command your world. Because wealth lives where the tongue is trained. Because what you speak with certainty must eventually appear. Because the wealth is not out there, it is in your declaration. Say them with me now, and do not whisper, all I need is already arriving. My voice is the vault. Large sums come to me now, under grace. And do not stop, not until your bank account agrees, not until your environment adjusts, not until your name becomes synonymous with the rhythm of wealth. For the mouth was made not to survive, but to summon. And your summoning starts now. There is something mysterious and holy about rhythm. It bypasses the intellect, penetrates the nervous system, and recalibrates the emotions without asking for permission. Rhythm is the secret language of the spirit. It is how the universe was built, how time was ordered, how breath was given, how declarations become flesh. Rhythm is not decoration. It is law made audible. And when you speak spiritual truth not just with belief but with rhythm, your whole body begins to agree. Fear loses its grip, shame evaporates, emotional chaos is replaced by divine cadence. And this, my beloved, is what transformed me from a woman who begged for provision into a woman who declared and received without apology. I learned to speak in rhythm until my soul obeyed. You see, the mind can argue, the feelings can waver, but rhythm, spoken with intention, pierces through all resistance. When I was trembling with doubt, when the bills came faster than the clients, when the silence in my bank account echoed louder than my affirmations, I did not give in to analysis. I gave myself to rhythm. I did not try to outthink fear. I outspoke it. I did not try to change my mood. I changed my cadence. I walked across the floor of my small apartment saying, "Large sums come to me now, under grace." Again, and again, and again, until my body stopped trembling, until my breathing slowed, until I physically felt, heaven rearranging things on my behalf. Because rhythm does not just move sound, it moves substance. And when you speak divine law rhythmically, you train your emotions to follow the beat of truth instead of the static of appearances. You no longer wait for peace to arrive. You generate it. You no longer hope that faith will return. You build it syllable by syllable, breath by breath, word by word. Rhythm becomes your sword, your shelter, your elevator into higher awareness. And eventually, the trembling servant, the one who used to speak affirmations like a child hoping to be noticed, becomes a master, not through effort, but through spoken tempo. There was a man I knew, a painter, who could not sell a single work. For months, he spoke only of struggle, of no clients, of late rent. Until one day, I gave him a single phrase. I am now irresistibly magnetic to wealth, clients, and commissions. I told him, do not just say it, chant it, walk with it, breathe with it, marry it. Let your feet hit the ground in time with each syllable. Let it become the music of your day. He obeyed. And within 5 days, 3 collectors called. Within a month, he had to start a waiting list. It wasn't a miracle. It was rhythm. It was emotional alignment through repetition. It was law obeying the voice of authority. And that is what I say to you now. Do not wait for your feelings to catch up. Lead them. Train them. Speak in rhythm until your tears turn to power. Declare with cadence until your fears bow to faith. The emotional realm is like a river. It will follow the channel you carve. And rhythm is the chisel. Rhythm is the current. Rhythm is the command that says, this is the frequency now. This is the flow now. This is the truth now. Speak this now, not timidly, but with sacred tempo. I no longer speak to be heard. I speak to be obeyed. My rhythm is my rule. My cadence is my command. My emotions serve my law. Let it roll over you like thunder, like river, like music made of truth. For when rhythm lives on your tongue, the world cannot ignore your voice. It must dance to your decree. There is a sacred hour in every seeker's life where the old language breaks apart, not with violence, but with stillness. It is the moment when hope dissolves into knowing, when delay is dismissed as fiction, when you no longer try to become, but finally dare to be. I remember this moment vividly. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by bills, silence, and the ghost of every fearful thought I had ever inherited. I had said all the affirmations. I had written declarations in the margins of my journals. I had rehearsed truth in the mirror. And yet something still felt missing, because I was still hoping. I was still asking. I was still waiting for wealth to notice me. Until, in a single breath, something rose up within me. Not anger, not desperation, but divine memory. And I said aloud, with no performance and no pause, I am wealth. I no longer hope for it. I reveal it. In that moment, I crossed over. Not physically, not financially, but metaphysically. I stepped out of the cycle of effort and into the current of being. I stopped seeing wealth as something I would one day hold and started recognizing it as something I already carried. I understood then what I teach you now. Your wealth is not on the horizon. It is not waiting at the end of the hustle. It is not hiding behind hard work. It is seated within you, right now, clothed in divine identity, whispering, claim me, And the only reason it delays is because you keep postponing your own self-recognition. You keep hoping for what you've already been assigned. You keep praying to receive what you are meant to embody. The shift came when I stopped speaking from lack. I no longer said, "I need money." I began to say, "I reveal what I already carry." I no longer approached life as someone outside the gates of fortune. I walked as the gate itself. I no longer asked for a seat at the table. I remembered, I am the table. I am the feast. I am the flow. I put on a spiritual name tag that said Millionaire, not because the numbers matched, but because the identity was non-negotiable. I wore it in silence, in solitude, in uncertainty. And as I wore it, the world adjusted. The clients changed. The invitations came. The way I was seen shifted. But most importantly, the way I saw myself solidified. And now I ask you, when will you stop hoping? When will you stop describing yourself as on the way and start speaking as the destination? When will you stop waiting for permission and step into possession? Because until you become wealth in your posture, in your breath, in your gaze, in your stillness, your words will ring hollow. The law does not respond to hoping, it responds to harmony. And identity is the first sound of harmony. So say it now, with no apology, no hesitation. I am not asking to be rich, I am revealing who I already am. Feel how your cells shift. Feel how your breath deepens. Feel how the lie of delay dissolves. This is the moment you stop trying and start testifying. This is the vibration of dominion. This is the posture of those who no longer rent their spiritual name, but sign it with gold. You are not becoming. You are remembering. You are not earning. You are unveiling. You are not arriving. You are announcing. And the law cannot deny what is spoken in identity. This is when everything turns. This is when you stop hoping and start revealing. And from this place, nothing is withheld. There are moments in life when a truth is no longer something you study, no longer something you test, but something you embody, like breath, like blood, like name. And the only thing left to do is to repeat it until it reshapes the very air around you. For repetition is not for reinforcement, it is for revelation. You are not trying to convince the universe. You are training your frequency. You are cleansing every leftover voice of doubt. You are chiseling away every ancestral echo that once said, "This is not for you," because now you know it is for you. And not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. And now you are ready to speak in such rhythm, such certainty, such spiritual boldness that the gates of supply can no longer stay shut, not because they were locked, but because you had not yet claimed your sound. So here is your activation, your decree, your new rhythm to walk with for the next 21 days. Not once, not when convenient, not softly, not conditionally, but 3 times a day, as covenant, as consecration, as the rhythm of your new inheritance. These words are not borrowed, they are yours. They are drawn from the law itself. They carry the spiritual frequency of dominion, of remembrance, of reversal. They are not for testing, they are for inhabiting. Say first, I am the first in my line to remember the law. Let this sentence set fire to every generational shadow. Let it echo through your bloodline like a trumpet of reversal. You are not just seeking wealth, you are correcting a pattern. You are not just asking for overflow, you are repairing a spiritual lineage. You are the Moses of your family, the Joseph, the breaker of cycles, the one who said yes when everyone else said, "We don't do that." And this sentence must become your mantle. I am the first in my line to remember the law. Say it until you weep. Say it until you feel generations rising to applaud. Say it until you know that remembering is richer than receiving, because once you remember, nothing can be withheld. Then speak, I command my wealth, and it arrives. Not I ask, not I hope, not I prepare for someday, I command. Because your mouth is the government of your destiny. Your declaration is the key that starts the engine of provision. This sentence overrides waiting. It overrides watching. It silences the inner beggar and summons the royal voice. Say it until your environment rearranges. Say it until the mailbox turns holy. Say it until your very breath smells like confidence. Say it not with desperation, but with divine neutrality, with calm authority, with the sacred stillness of those who do not chase, but call. And finally declare, I am permanently funded by divine supply. This is not just a sentence, it is a seal. It ends the need to ask again. It ends the addiction to panic. It ends the cycle of feast and famine. It is the sound of spiritual certainty. The phrase that says, I know who I am and I know what backs me. It doesn't matter who left, what dried up, what declined, what failed. You are permanently funded, not conditionally, not seasonally, permanently. Because the supply is not in the bank, it's not in the check, it's not in the job, it's in the law, and the law never closes, the law never delays, the law never underpays. Say this sentence until you can hear it even in silence, until it plays behind every action, until your soul stands still and knows, it is done. 3 times a day, for 21 days, morning, midday, and night. Not as a ritual, but as a reminder. Not to get anything, but to keep from forgetting. Because forgetting is the only poverty, and remembering is the gate. So speak now wherever you are. Whisper it if you must. Shout it if you dare. Let the heavens bear witness as you say, I am the first in my line to remember the law. I command my wealth, and it arrives. I am permanently funded by divine supply. Say it, and then walk as if it were already law, because it is. There comes a moment on this journey where you understand that wealth was never about the number, the asset, the inheritance left in a will, or the title printed on paper. True wealth, true legacy, is rhythm. It is the pattern of speech, the cadence of consciousness, the unshakable vibration of divine identity spoken again and again until it becomes not only the soundtrack of your life, but the music your descendants hear even when you are no longer speaking. I learned this not in a seminar, not in a spreadsheet, but in silence, divine silence, where Spirit whispered to me, You do not pass down money. You pass down movement. You do not leave behind things, you leave behind rhythm. And that rhythm, the rhythm of law, of declaration, of divine timing, of wealth identity, is the only inheritance that cannot be taxed, stolen, diluted, or lost in translation. When I began to speak divine law into my life, I did not do it only for myself. I did it for everyone who came before me and never knew they could. For every ancestor who was told to stay small, to be grateful for scraps, to survive instead of shine. I spoke with their unspoken longing in my lungs. I declared with their unreleased dreams in my throat. I opened my mouth not only as a woman claiming her right, but as a lineage remembering its rhythm. And the moment I said, I am the first but not the last, I felt something in the unseen realm shift. I felt the past release me. I felt the future take shape. I felt every delay dissolve. Because that sentence, that rhythm, became a spiritual contract, a vow, a declaration that this wealth is not mine to hoard, but mine to model. And now it is yours, to carry, to embody, to echo. Legacy is not in what you leave, it is in what you repeat. It is in what you say so often, so clearly, so faithfully, that your children's children never even consider another way. It's not just about breaking generational curses. It's about building generational cadence. You are not here to interrupt the past. You are here to install a new rhythm, a rhythm where wealth is not questioned, a rhythm where law is not optional, a rhythm where the voice is not trained to complain or conform, but to command and create. And if you do this, not once, but daily, rhythmically, unshakably, you will not just be the first millionaire in your family. You will be the first to sing a new spiritual song, a rhythm of truth, a rhythm of dominion, a rhythm of divine provision spoken and sustained. Say it now and let it ring through your bones. I am the first, but not the last. They rise because I spoke. They prosper because I remembered. They flourish because I refuse to forget the law. Feel what that means. Not just for you, but for the ones who will one day ask, "How did this begin?" And someone will say your name. Not because you saved money, but because you spoke rhythm. You became rhythm. You lived in law. And wealth could not help but obey. You have heard the law. You have spoken the rhythm. You have remembered the truth that has no lineage except spirit, no source except word, no delay except your own silence. And now comes the most important moment of all. Not the moment of learning, but the moment of becoming. Not the moment of taking notes, but the moment of taking dominion. Because no truth has power until it is spoken. No law has authority until it is lived. No rhythm echoes beyond you until you commit to say it, out loud, without fear, without apology, without waiting for a sign that it's working. You are the sign. You are the miracle. You are the first to walk with this law on your tongue and this identity in your bones. But you will not be the last, if you dare now to speak. This is your sacred call to action, not to consume, not to be entertained, but to covenant, to join a lineage not of blood, but of boldness,